For centuries, the great royal houses of Europe were the definition of power. They ruled empires, commanded armies, and sat on thrones piled high with gold and silk. Their bloodlines, they claimed, were the purest on earth. But beneath the veneer of divine right and dynastic glory, a dark secret was festering. A curse, not of witchcraft or some forgotten prophecy, but one of their own making. To keep their power locked down and their bloodline pure, Europe's royals turned to a dangerous tradition, marrying their own relatives. It was a strategy designed to consolidate power, but it backfired spectacularly. Think of a royal bloodline as a recipe. By using only the same few ingredients over and over, the final dish becomes bland and weak. This quest for purity unleashed a genetic time bomb, leaving a trail of disease, madness, and tragedy that still haunts the royal houses of Europe. This is the story of how that obsession with blood purity nearly led to their complete annihilation, with the British royal family caught right in the middle of the storm. Long before the British royals had their own genetic crisis, another dynasty offered a terrifying preview of what happens when you keep it all in the family, the House of Habsburg. For centuries, these guys were the most powerful family in Europe, controlling a vast empire from Spain and Austria to the Americas. Their motto was basically, let other people wage war. We'll just get married. And they did. The problem was, they rarely married anyone they weren't related to. The Habsburgs were masters of marrying their own blood. To keep their land and power all in the family, uncle-niece marriages and first-cousin marriages became the norm. Over nearly 200 years in the Spanish branch of the family, 9 of their 11 marriages were between close blood relatives. They thought they were protecting their lineage, but they were actually shrinking their genetic pool until it was less like a vast ocean and more like a stagnant puddle. With every generation, any rare, harmful genes became dangerously common, like drawing from a deck of cards where all the losing cards have been shuffled to the top. The most infamous result? The Habsburg jaw, a severe underbite where the lower jaw grew so much larger than the upper that the teeth couldn't even meet. You can see it in their portraits, generation after generation with the same jutting chin and lopsided mouth. The tragic finale of this genetic experiment was King Charles II of Spain. He was the end product of centuries of family inbreeding. His father was his mother's uncle. His genetic makeup was so tangled that his inbreeding coefficient, a measure of genetic relatedness, was a jaw-dropping 0.254. To put that in perspective, his genetic material wasn't just getting information from his parents, it was like a genetic echo chamber, where the same flawed ancestral information bounced back and forth, getting amplified with each generation, making it even more extreme than that of a child whose parents are brother and sister. His subjects called him El Hechizado, the Bewitched, because they figured only black magic could explain his condition. He suffered from epilepsy, constant illness, and severe developmental delays. His Habsburg jaw was so pronounced he could barely chew or speak, and his oversized tongue made him drool. He was also infertile. Despite 2 marriages, he couldn't produce an heir. When Charles II died in 1700, just before his 39th birthday, his autopsy report was allegedly a horror show. It claimed his body did not contain a single drop of blood, his heart was the size of a peppercorn, his lungs corroded, his intestines rotten and gangrenous. With his death, the Spanish Habsburg line ended. It was a terrifying cautionary tale about how a dynasty obsessed with purity could literally breed itself into extinction. It was a warning that the rest of Europe, including the British royals, would fail to heed. Across the channel, another powerful dynasty was playing the same game of strategic intermarriage, just not quite at the Habsburg level. But under one particular monarch, this practice would have consequences that would change the continent forever. That monarch was Queen Victoria. Victoria, who ruled for over 63 years, became known as the grandmother of Europe. Her 9 children were married into nearly every major royal house on the continent, a grand plan to weave a web of family ties that would supposedly guarantee peace. She herself married her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. While it was a genuine love story, it also reinforced the tradition of marrying within a small royal circle. But Victoria carried something else besides the crown. Hidden in her DNA was a spontaneous genetic mutation, a tiny flaw on one of her X chromosomes. Think of it like a single corrupted line of code in a massive computer program. That one tiny error was the mutation for a rare and frightening disorder, hemophilia B. Hemophilia is a disease where the blood doesn't clot properly. The reason it mostly affects men is all down to our chromosomes. You can think of a woman's two X chromosomes as a computer with a backup system. If one X chromosome has the faulty hemophilia gene, the other healthy one acts as a failsafe, and she shows no symptoms. She's a carrier. But a man has only one X chromosome, he has no backup system. If his single X chromosome carries the faulty gene, the system crashes. A minor injury, a bump, a bruise, even a small cut, can lead to severe, uncontrollable bleeding. Queen Victoria was a carrier, Prince Albert was not. The first sign of the curse appeared in her own family. Her youngest son, Prince Leopold, was a delicate child who bruised easily and suffered from painful, swollen joints, classic signs of hemophilia. His life was a constant struggle, overshadowed by his condition. In 1884, at just 30 years old, Leopold slipped and fell. It was a minor accident that proved fatal. He died the next morning from a brain hemorrhage. Leopold's death was a terrible blow to Victoria, but it was just the beginning. The royal disease, as hemophilia was now known, was officially on the loose. Two of Victoria's daughters, Alice and Beatrice, were also carriers. Like their mother, they were perfectly healthy. But as they were married off to the royal houses of Germany, Russia, and Spain, they unknowingly carried the genetic time bomb with them. Victoria's web of alliances was about to become a web of affliction, spreading a curse that would help topple thrones. The seeds of destruction sown by Queen Victoria's genes found their most fertile and tragic ground in Russia. The disaster started with Victoria's daughter, Princess Alice, a carrier of the hemophilia gene. Alice married into German nobility, and one of her daughters, Alex, would eventually marry Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, becoming Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna. After having 4 daughters, the couple finally had a son and heir in 1904, Tsarevich Alexei. The empires celebrated, but their joy quickly turned to terror. It soon became clear that little Alexei had inherited his great-grandmother Queen Victoria's curse. He had hemophilia. The diagnosis became a state secret. An heir who was seen as weak or sickly could undermine the entire monarchy. Alexei's childhood was a nightmare of pain and constant fear. A simple fall could lead to massive internal bleeding that left him bedridden and screaming in agony for weeks. Desperate, the empress turned to one of the most notorious figures in Russian history, Grigory Rasputin. He was a Siberian peasant and mystic, and to the astonishment of the court's doctors, he seemed to be the only one who could ease Alexei's suffering. When the boy was having a bleeding episode, a prayer from Rasputin often appeared to stop it. How did he do it? Modern historians believe the answer is simple. A common painkiller at the time was aspirin, which we now know is a blood thinner, a potential poison for a hemophilia. The royal doctors, trying to ease the boy's pain, were unknowingly making the bleeding worse, like pouring gasoline on a fire. Rasputin, who distrusted doctors, would banish them and their medicines. By simply taking the gasoline away, he gave the boy's body the chance to heal on its own. But to Alexandra, Rasputin was a holy man sent by God. Her faith gave him incredible influence. While the Tsar was at the front lines of World War I, Alexandra and Rasputin were essentially running the country. This fueled public outrage and rumors that they were lovers and German spies. The monarchy, already fragile, was fatally discredited. The need to hide Alexei's hemophilia, a direct result of royal intermarriage, had led them to embrace a man who destroyed their credibility. In 1918, the entire family, including the fragile Alexei, was executed by revolutionaries. The Romanov dynasty was wiped out, a victim of both political upheaval and a genetic curse passed down from the British throne. At the same time, the same tragedy was unfolding in Spain. Queen Victoria's youngest daughter, Princess Beatrice, was also a carrier. Her daughter, Victoria Eugenie, married King Alfonso XIII of Spain in 1906. She brought the royal disease with her. Their firstborn son and heir, Alfonso, was a hemophiliac. So was their youngest son, Gonzalo. The Spanish public turned on Queen Victoria Eugenie, blaming her for bringing tainted blood to their country. The monarchy was weakened, and both sons met tragic ends. In 1934, 19-year-old Gonzalo died from internal bleeding after a minor car accident. Just 4 years later, his older brother Alfonso died at 31, also from internal bleeding after a car crash. Once again, Victoria's legacy had proven to be one of genetic ruin. While hemophilia was causing chaos across Europe, the British royal family was dealing with its own genetic ghosts. The most famous case is King George III, the Mad King who lost America. He suffered from recurring episodes of acute mental illness. He would talk non-stop until he foamed at the mouth and sometimes had hallucinations, once allegedly trying to shake hands with a tree he thought was the King of Prussia. For centuries, this was just called madness. In the 1960s, a theory emerged that he suffered from a rare genetic disorder called porphyria. However, this diagnosis is now highly debated by medical experts and historians, who point out the evidence was cherry-picked. Many now believe it's more likely he suffered from a severe mental illness, like bipolar disorder. Whatever the cause, his illness triggered a major political crisis and showed how the health of a monarch could shape the fate of nations. The arrival of hemophilia with Queen Victoria added a new, lethal chapter. While the British throne itself was spared a hemophiliac heir, her son Edward VII did not inherit the gene. The family still felt the pain directly through the life and early death of Prince Leopold. The 20th century, however, brought a reckoning. World War I shattered the old world. The great empires of Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary collapsed, and the whole political system that made royal marriages a strategic tool fell apart with them. Queen Victoria's grandsons, King George V of the UK and Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, ended up on opposite sides of a catastrophic war. The pool of royal spouses shrank dramatically. It was like a game of musical chairs where most of the chairs had been removed, and the remaining options were uncomfortably close. At the same time, a modern understanding of genetics began to emerge, and the disastrous results of their traditions were impossible to ignore. The final nail in the coffin was a shift in public thinking. The idea of marrying for duty instead of love started to seem ridiculous. This was driven home in 1936 when King Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American commoner. By choosing love over the crown, he broke with centuries of tradition. This paved the way for the modern monarchy we see today. The marriage of Queen Elizabeth II to Philip Mountbatten, who were distant cousins, was already a step away from the tight-knit family circles of the past. But the real shift came with the next generations. Prince Charles marrying Lady Diana Spencer, and more recently, Prince William and Prince Harry marrying Catherine Middleton and Meghan Markle, both commoners, shows a complete break from the old doctrine of pure blood. The history of royal inbreeding is a story of incredible irony. In a relentless quest to keep power, to keep their bloodlines pure, the great royal families of Europe nearly engineered their own destruction. From the Habsburgs to the tragic madness of King George III, the policy of marrying cousin to cousin left a scar across the continent. At the center of the story was Queen Victoria, the grandmother of Europe, whose personal genetic flaw became a continental curse. The royal disease bled into the ruling houses of Spain and Russia, weakening them from within and contributing to their collapse. It was a long, painful lesson that a family tree, much like a real one, can't thrive if it doesn't have room to branch out. The modern British royal family is proof that this lesson was learned. By abandoning the dangerous tradition of inbreeding and embracing marriages based on love instead of strategy, they adapted to survive. It's a stark reminder that the strength of any family lies not in its exclusivity, but in its ability to learn from the past and choose a healthier future. What do you think is the most shocking part of this royal history? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this dive into the dark side of royalty fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the annals of history. Thanks for watching.